Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Liquid Future. Today, we have Nathan Altman. Nathan ran for the U.S. Senate in Indiana as a liquid democracy candidate. We're very lucky to get to talk to him. He's been working on this stuff for a long time, and he has a lot of interesting perspective to share. Thank you very much for being here, Nathan.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the invite. Good to chat again.
So great. It's been too long.
Yeah, I know we live so close in the city, and still,
Right.
it has been too long. So
Yeah, it's funny. We're doing this over the internet, but we're actually only about 5 blocks away from each other. Practically
indeed,
walk.
nice.
So let's just get started with a little bit about how you got into this stuff. What triggered something in you that made you want to run for the U.S. Senate, the second highest seat someone can run for in the United States?
Sure. Well, I think with a lot of us that are listening on the podcast are pretty concerned over the last few years of what's been going on and the way in which we are governing ourselves. And so I was at a point in time when I had, some life choices on what I wanted to do next. I had my project before had kind of turned down, and started looking at what I could do to really advance, my own career, but also like what I could do with the skill sets I had. And once that kind of thought kind of popped into my mind around being able to try to lead such a large group of people, and coupled with the trying to advocate for new change and how we could lead not only now but into the future. That was really the main component of it. Was like, I'm kind of a person, once I can see a path, I go for it full steam. The likelihood of me actually winning the seat was very, very small, but doing it and learning from that experience, but also, advancing the idea of liquid democracy was really important. So I'm glad that I played my very small part in that effort, and excited to continue to, do things like this and in my future work, better educated after that experience. So.
Totally. And so you ran as an independent.
I did. Yep. That was, I think, somebody that understands and enjoys the liquid democracy idea and platform. The independent is kind of a natural fit. But the political system, thinks otherwise. So I think that's some interesting discussion we could have about, what might be the best way to try to get a foothold into different offices, and then what we can do from that part forward. So the independent path, specifically in Indiana, is one of the worst states in the country to actually even get on the ballot. And that was a huge learning curve for me, and just trying to see how big of a hurdle that was.
So to get specifics, you're referring to the number of signatures you need, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So in the state of Indiana, we needed just shy of 30,000 verified signatures, paper signatures, spread across 92 counties. And each county had their own election board that had to verify them. So there's some interesting stories in what our campaign, came up against. But yeah, that's what we're referring to. Yep.
And how many signatures do you need if you run within one of the major parties?
So the major party in the state of Indiana, they needed right around 4,000 signatures. So almost an order of magnitude more as an independent. And they also had a state-funded and sponsored primary process. So it was a staggering difference. And I think that most people in the electorate didn't even understand that, why do we only have two parties? Well, it's systems and systematically set up like that.
That's wild.
Yeah. Have you guys talked to Jonathan Jenkins in Texas? I mean, that was probably one of the hardest states if he's on the pod. So that would be a little cohort of us running for the Senate, and a few of us got on with the states that had smaller ballot access requirements. But John and I definitely got pummeled. So
yeah, thanks for the reminder. Yeah, I need to reach out to Jonathan again. For everyone listening, Jonathan was leading something called the Indy Party, and also working on an independent bid for the U.S. Senate in Texas in the Ted Cruz Beto O'Rourke race. And he had a huge amount of organizing behind him. They were traveling all over the country. They were getting thousands of signatures, and there's some crazy things that happened in the end. So we'll be sure to bring him on as well.
I'm sure it'd be a good story.
So let's start with with liquid democracy, how did you learn about liquid democracy? What excited you about it in the beginning?
Sure. So before setting out on a task such as large as running for the Senate, I was trying to figure out how I'd position myself, or what would be the thing I'd want to advocate, and how I'd want to actually lead. If given or elected into office. Coming from a generation and a background in software and technology, I knew that there had been. It's probably one of the reasons I didn't. That puts me off most about being our political process is the way in which people get information. Because it's an election held every 2 to 4 years or 6 years, and that's pretty much the only time you get direct feedback from your constituents. And I was thinking there surely had to be a better way that we could do this, kind of like we can now put together a podcast from blocks away over the internet, and started penciling things out as kind of a business idea, not a business idea, sorry, my background, but like a way in which we could organize, and kind of came up with the underpinnings of what liquid democracy would be. And then being humbled enough, knowing that I wasn't the smartest person in the room, started to reach out and just try to do some research on some folks that had been doing more work prior to me. And that's how we got connected. And the thing that I noticed, it wasn't a technical problem per se, it was more of a human problem of trying to get people to understand that this is possible, to trust the process. And there weren't enough people running for office in that election cycle, and kind of sat with that for a little bit. It was a big decision to make, to even go and throw my hat in the ring, and proud to be early part. And I hope in years to come that we all look back and say it was some interesting times back in 2018 when we a few of us tried to run for office, and hopefully in the 2020 sometime we'll look back and be like, we did a good thing. So
Completely. And yeah, so that kind of invites the question:
mhm.
are you happy, Rand?
It
Would you do
was
things differently?
absolutely, and I would say that it has given me a entirely different perspective in life. Trying to connect with all wide ranging groups of people. Coming back to the Midwest after calling California home for many years, and also just understanding the challenges of what it would be like to lead, in my case, almost 5 million people. So I think that even at whatever scale, if it goes down to your county offices to as large of a scale that I did, it's a really good practice to understand how people think and what people want out of a leader. So in those aspects, I think it was a great experience. It was emotionally and brutal. So as far as I'm not somebody that likes to really get in front of the camera. I've always been more of an operator. I've ran many businesses that way. So I had to get more comfortable in even like being on a podcast and talking and getting in front of audiences. So it pushed myself to some extreme limits. But
Now
now
you're very
almost,
comfortable.
yeah, exactly. Now it's much easier and a good skill set. So there's lots to learn by running for office.
And do you think you'll do it again anytime soon?
I'm doing it in a unique way right now. I'm taking a lot of these skill sets and merging them into some of the things that I have some really good skills with, and trying to advance not only the thinking of what liquid democracy is and the blockchain, but trying to go at it a little more in a more creative manner. So that's a wishy-washy answer. Of course, I can't say I'm running for office,
Yeah,
but it's ever present in my mind.
definitely. And there's no immediate election coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So what surprised you about running? The good, the bad, the ugly?
What surprised me?
How about the good? Let's start with that.
I was really just really surprised at the amount of people that came out of the woodwork that really enjoyed this idea, and even in the Midwest, that could understand like, oh, this is a new way of thinking, and those bonds and relationships that were built in that period of time were really, really amazing, and have already paid dividends, even coming back out to the Midwest. So, there are really amazing people all around the world. And I was really humbled by people that would come in and put time and energy and effort to help, spread the message of liquid democracy. So that was probably the most inspiring piece, was just watching people come together around an idea like that.
Interesting. And these are people that you had never heard from, as well as people you already knew?
Yeah, those were definitely a blend, and I would say that largely people that I'd never heard of. So, just as we did TV interviews or got in the newspaper, we had a constant kind of outreach to us of saying, "Hey, I want to help. How can I get on board?" Unfortunately, we started our campaign really late, so the timing it was definitely a moonshot to see if we could get on the ballot and run a race. But we got closer than even a lot of us thought, given the amount of resources we had.
Totally.
Yeah.
So another lesson for next time is start sooner.
Oh, you've got to. I mean, that's start sooner. You hear these classic things when people run for office. You got to run multiple times. You got to start sooner. You got to build a base. All of those are very true. I think that, however, if we had hit something special, we could have done it because of the ability to amass around an idea quickly. That's possible today. That's never been before. So I wouldn't discourage somebody to try. Just go into it knowing that it's a really challenging thing to do.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's been my perspective that I try to share with people.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like we got off to a quick start. We're in the middle of the story, but let's step back a little bit.
Sure.
What's your background? Where did you come from? What were you working on before this stuff?
Sure. So my background is kind of an interesting path that goes all weaves all in and out of different things. But some of the through lines, I've led large groups and organizations, through most portions of my life. Most recently, before running for office, I was working for Burning Man, the annual festival out in the Black Rock Desert in Nevada. So I left a career prior in venture capital in the Bay. I was running a company called Launch Media. And from that point, kind of wanted to take a break and found myself in the middle of an art project in 2015. And that happened to be the Temple. So anybody that's familiar, that's watching the pod might, know of the Temple at Burning Man. And that's how my intro into that culture and that event. They asked me to lead it after about 4 or 5 days. You know,
Yeah.
getting familiar with the project in the first part of July, and so stepped up and said, "Okay, yeah, let's do this." And we ended up building a temple, and that was the first time I ever went to Burning Man. So.
That's
And then
wild.
from that point, I was city superintendent there. So I actually did in 2016. Was in charge of all the big utilities and construction projects on the site. And then in 17, I led the man crew and built the man pavilion to design and built that, the last one that Larry Harvey was with us for. So that was my
Wow.
background quickly in more recent time. So
For people that are unfamiliar with Burning Man, what's it all about?
sure. So this was a really fun thing to go on a campaign trail, as you could imagine, right? With some
Yeah,
of the perception of
it's
what Burning Man
non-traditional.
is, specifically in back in the Midwest. So the thing that inspired me to get involved with it was just the sheer um, challenge of building these type of huge 10-story buildings out there in the middle of the desert and doing it and producing the third largest city in Nevada when it's operational. So these are things that really, I think, don't really get good context. People think of it as like a big festival or something else. But we actually build a fully functional airport, hospitals, you name it, utilities departments to manage these a city of almost 80,000 people. So and we've got a culture that people come in, set up, and then take everything out, pack in and pack out type. So to get 80,000 people to do something and to do it in a respectful manner year over year is a pretty impressive feat.
And in a span of weeks.
Yep. From the time we put the fence up, the trash fence as it's known, to the time we take it down is under 6 weeks. So in 6 weeks, in 3 weeks we build, 1 week we have the event, 2 weeks we tear down.
It's just wild going
Yeah.
from as you said, the third largest city in Nevada to sand in the
To
desert.
nothing. Yep. And that's, I took a lot of learning from that over the years. And I think that was something I was trying to advocate out into the world of saying, hey, we've done this experiment for 30 plus years. Like there's some really good nuggets of like how people interact with each other that we should learn from. So,
Can you speak to that more?
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these different when you go into a very creative space, and we're fortunate as a population, specifically in the United States, where we have the ability to kind of venture into different mindsets a little more, because we have a lot of our base needs met. This is something that we're all should be very grateful that we can sit and be able to communicate online and be comfortable. And it
We're
needs
not
outlets.
hunting
It
for
needs
dinner
creative.
right now.
Exactly. I mean, these are things that are the new norm, and so we need ways in which to keep busy. We need ways to keep our minds active, to learn. And Burning Man is a really good kind of safe space for that, where people can come, be creative, and build community. I think that's one of the side effects that we're fighting right now is we're able to communicate with everybody, but we do it remote. And so we've lost some of this community aspect in our lives. And that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about bringing back into the world, is actually getting people to hang out not only virtually, but also in person, and build things. So, and make things and create things and dream again. So that's kind of, if I had to be any type of personal brand, that's how I hope to lead in the future. So,
And what was the reaction that you found in the Midwest, especially for someone running for such high office?
mhm.
Were people interested in this? Were people shocked?
I think that there was definitely some shock. I think that, but at the same time, I was really, again, really surprised by the amount of people that came around the idea. I think that it could definitely work, given enough time. But the strategy I see more is we need to get somebody proving out the model as far as liquid democracy goes, to a proof point that makes it real for people, and then it can spread really quickly. It's kind of designed that way. So, I looked at the two opportunities that I had in 18. One would have been to try to put my foot in the ring, in California within like a week or two, to try to get on a ballot, or given the election process or the way they're set up in Indiana, had more time there. And that's why we chose Indiana. So, but definitely think it can work. And the reaction is quite good. So,
Do you think that it's more likely to work in a place like California, Bay
I
Area
think,
idea versus Indiana? Was
uh,
there hostility? Did you hear people say, "Oh, we're not into this sort of thing. Keep this in the Bay Area"?
there was some of that. I think that's just some of the even within our own country, we have this problem, right? Where rural areas, don't fully understand what city centers have, and this is a common problem, pretty much all around the world. So I was definitely, even though I was born and raised there, and lived there all the way through, my mid 20s, I was still kind of an outsider, and I knew that was going to be a problem, kind of coming back, at such a quick jar, if you will. But I think California, specifically the Bay Area, we're kind of used to a mindset, that I think could advance it more. And so the play I see is the somewhere in that, somewhere in California, or New York, or somewhere in the bigger metropolitan areas, where we could get a foothold either next election cycle, or the election cycle afterwards, and that could be the kind of jumping off point, for other states.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear a lot of different perspectives on this.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I hear people say, "Oh, San Francisco, the Bay Area, it's perfect for it because everybody's so digital. People love trying new ideas. It's where Airbnb started, it's where Uber started, it's down the street from Google and everything
Mm-hmm.
else you can imagine, Apple and all of our iPhones and all that." On the other hand, I hear people say, it would be dangerous for this stuff to be associated so tightly with the Bay Area because famously San Francisco and Oakland and the East Bay have a reputation for a certain political view. And so some people in other parts of the country would say, "Okay, cool. It's great that you can do this in San Francisco. I want to see you do this in Nebraska. I want to see you do this in Wichita. I want to see you do this in an entirely different area. If you can prove to me that it will work there, that's really meaningful."
Yeah, and I think this is the same type of early adopter problem we face, in any type of new project, be it a physical product or a tech piece of software. is you got to find a group of people that are willing to kind of go through the challenging parts, right? So it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be buggy, if you will. And you need a group of people that are willing to kind of embrace that and help you build it. And that was a struggle in Indiana, just the idea that, it's not perfect. It's not, conservatism is that in name. And they want things to be proven before they jump. So, it naturally lends itself to a more progressive mindset. But one of the things I like about it is that it can work across, because all it's trying to do is best represent the group of people, which is really the whole underpinning of our political system is like the reason why we give equal time in votes to different parts of the world is that they have, different ways that they live their life. So I think liquid democracy does a really good job of that. If you run it in a very extremely conservative area, you'll get more conservative results. And if you run it in a liberal area, you'll get more liberal results. And that's the way it's, in my view, personally, it should be. So, and hopefully there's a meeting of the minds that comes when we can actually, respectfully communicate. So.
Yeah, no, I've heard people that identify far left and far right incredibly enthusiastic, and moderates and centrists and wherever you want to line up on the spectrum. I haven't personally witnessed a heavy bias. One political ideology is more excited about liquid democracy than others. Yeah, there have been a number of very libertarian or people that identify with the Tea Party that are very sick of traditional electoral representation. They've gotten really excited.
And I'm kind of jumping back to a previous question about why. I see this is not a question of, that would be nice, right? We should probably do liquid democracy. Wouldn't that be nice? I see it as like would become a really important milestone in our lives, because we cannot continue in the path we're going right now. The governmental system is just way too slow, and things have gotten accelerated well past it. And if we don't bring it back into a normal state, I think there'll be some problems. So, and I believe that through and through.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I'm worried you might be right. It sure would be nice if things would just fix themselves.
I certainly didn't have any desire to go and do all that. And you know what I mean? But it was one of those where, I looked in the mirror and was like, I think I could do that and be of good service. And I think that's important when people that, whoever runs for office, if that isn't your idea or the thing you tell yourself is that you could be of service to others, then you shouldn't be running for office. You should do something else.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Just getting back to this idea of where to start, the question of where's the good place to start. I've heard suggestions, I think there's a lot to this, about starting with a much smaller community. That it's just really hard to make much of a foothold in a city with 1 million people or on the national level, because there's so many voices already competing with each other. There's so much tug of war already going on, versus focusing more on the local level or even on the hyper local. Like there have been some suggestions of find the small community with less than 20,000 people, ideally, maybe like 3,000, 4,000, and be able to really get to know the community and let them really see this new potential and this new technology and what it means to be able to represent themselves directly and also be able to pick their own representatives when they want, and be able to firsthand meet everyone in the community, shake everybody's hands, really make it much more three-dimensional than is possible on a large scale. I think there's a lot to that. It's definitely been on my mind lately.
Yeah, and I think that I would agree with you as far as some of the what I'm doing next, and that's kind of rooted in that. Because we need to be able to see and hear people right first, and that should grow quickly. And it's set up. The nice part about the way in which liquid democracy is set up is it's designed to grow rapidly. So if you start to really have a good spark and kindling in there, then it should expand and by design. So I think that's a really smart path, and I'm glad to hear that you guys over at Liquid US are are experimenting in the smaller realm. Um, I've got a few ideas as well about how in what I'm doing and right now and into the future we might be able to use as a test case if I get to become successful in it. So
Completely, because we haven't found the perfect community yet, I don't think.
mhm. Yeah,
I mean, there's
and I
there's a
don't
lot
know.
of places. We're doing some work in Oakland and
Mhm.
Chicago and around Madison, Wisconsin that's having a good amount of headway. And there are little pockets in other places. But in general, we've seen over and over again that the more local we go, the more impact we can have far and
Nice.
away. We're reaching decision makers, we're reaching elected officials. They'll actually cite things that people are saying on the Liquid US platform. And we've changed some voting decisions on the local level.
That's awesome.
But we'd like to go even smaller.
Yeah. So maybe I'll take this opportunity to jump into what I'm doing next.
Yeah.
And it's
Hit
kind
me.
of funny. We haven't really chatted about it, so it'll be new.
Yeah.
I think I met you up for
Like
a
5 months
drink.
ago.
Yeah, something like that. I think I showed you a hand sketch maybe of
Yeah.
that art project I'm working on. So that's really taken off, and we're really
Fantastic.
excited to have some releases here soon. But the project name is the Inner Sun Project. Um, and it is one of the things I was trying to figure out what I want to do next after running for office and trying to utilize some of these skills and base building, if you will, or building a community of folks that are able to go do something in the world. And I look back at my time with building big art, and that's merging the two ideas. So it's like we're trying to do something that's really wide reaching, but also through the lens of an art piece. And so the Inner Sun Project, we're our kind of stated mission at the moment is to see if we can get more people involved with building one art piece than Burning Man can sell tickets. So that sets us up at around 100,000 people to
Oh
see
my
if we can get
God.
100,000 people to partake with us to build a piece of art. And we've been building all the kind of infrastructure to do that. And we're about ready to release more publicly probably next week. So the idea behind it is that the composition of the piece is two hands holding the world. So give you or the audience a little bit idea of scale. Those two hands from the fingertip to the wrist are 160 feet long, and from the thumb to the thumb is 100 foot wide, and the globe itself is 84 foot tall. And so that's about an 8-story building that'll be constructed and brought out to the Black Rock Desert. And then in the equator line, if you will, is 42 feet off the ground. And what's really wild in the design, we were actually able to get people to be able to go through an ADA ramps all the way up to 42 feet in the air. So it winds up through the wrist and the thumb, and then up to the equator. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of like what it is. But the neat part about how people can get involved starting today is we ask the question, what keeps you alive or what inspires you? And the answer, we're trying to get people to answer that in a few words and write the answer on the palm of their hand with a pen or a pen, whatever, mechanism you wish, piece of tape if you don't like to have it on your skin. And then compose a picture with your face in a square. And what we're going to do, we've got it set up where we trace the hand and we pull off the text, and we actually make a steel version of your hand that actually makes up the hands holding the world. And
Oh my
so this
God.
is the part where it can cross borders. We can go to different countries. Our goal is to not only get 100,000 people, but to have every country represented. Somebody's hand from every country. And we're trying to send this message around. There are at least 100,000 of us that care. And we're excited to see where that goes. So this is what I'm seeing as liquid democracy as we get a group of that size. Like, how do we govern ourselves? How do we make decisions? So that's what, if we're or when we're successful in amassing that, we might have a really fun test bed to, start implementing ideas of liquid democracy within it. So
Wow.
that's what
That's
I'm up
incredible.
to. So it's a heck of a lot more fun than running for office, but I
And
also
running
think
for,
it can be more impactful than running for the United States Senate.
yeah.
And it's kind of fun that I can actually say that with some confidence. So,
Yeah. My experience running was 80% of people were super positive, super enthusiastic, wanted to talk, wanted to listen. and then 20% of people just assume that I must have been the devil.
I know,
They
right?
were like,
Like, no.
they were just so
uh,
angry, the fact
yeah.
that anyone would put their name forward. Oh my god, just so much vitriol.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this mix of emotions of all these people that were so supportive and exposed me to this different side of humanity that I hadn't seen as much. And then also all these people that were the most suspicious you could ever imagine, were the most angry you could ever imagine. Just,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
yeah.
And it
So
takes all
it
types.
was
We got to figure out
an
how
experience.
to, and then you realize you're going to represent every one of them when you do that role.
Definitely.
So that's another interesting thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame them. I totally get the intuition that our leaders need to be held to a high standard. These things matter an incredible amount. We want to understand all that. But man, is it emotionally exhausting to deal with day in and day out. I just needing to meet hundreds of people a day or
Mm-hmm.
thousands of people and just wanting to connect with people, but because of the realities of running for an office with hundreds of thousands of people, only getting such a tiny short amount of time to actually get to speak with
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think we're fortunate that we've had those experiences. So, it's now the question is what do you want to do in the future? And it's pretty neat what you've dedicated your, foreseeable future in, to keep pushing on this idea. And, it gives me hope. It allows me to go and try to do this interesting art piece. So I appreciate that you're continuing to push on the, in those directives. So, only gratitude on this side. So,
Likewise. I mean, it's going to take a lot of us.
yeah, it will.
Yeah. And the community is growing. I mean, it's very clear from my perspective how many more people are learning about these ideas, reaching out, impact. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just along the metric of countries that reach out alone, it's like every week new people from new countries saying, how can we set this up here?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
And
I think that there's going to be an interesting, I think that it needs a rally point, and that was my hypothesis when I looked at it. That's why I'm doing this piece with the building this piece called the Inner Sun. Is I think that could be a really tangible rally point that people do a small action that's not so scary in the sense like I know how to use a camera, I know how to answer the question and submit it online, and it gives a little bit of mystery of like what it could be and allow people to dream a little bit. And so my hope is that we were able to um, harness some of it and get people together to do something, and then that'll continue down the road of like, oh, of course we need to go and figure out how to run our own country's governments and other things. So it just seems natural, a natural progression, as opposed to trying to get trying to just take a high seat. So it's interesting.
so where in the project are you?
So we are at the point where we're just kind of got our website. It'll some tweaks here in the next few days, but probably when this goes live, it'll be live. So I encourage everybody to go to the Inner Sun or theinnersun.org. Hopefully we'll get the SEO to where if you just type Inner Sun at any time, you'll be able to go there. But so theinnersun.org is the website. You can read up more about it and join the team, and submit your idea in hand. That would mean a lot to us. If you're in a place where you can financially contribute, that would be great. But we're not gating it in that. We'd prefer to have a lot of people versus try to ask for dollars right off the bat. So the important part is to amass a group of people that care.
Completely. And the goal is to have all this up and running in 6 months.
Yep. The goal is that it'll make it to Burning Man this year. It is an extremely tight timeline, but we know that if we can get the right message to spread, that it can happen almost instantaneously. So that's our goal. We've got a dedicated team, of ever-growing team, probably of like close to 30 or 40 people, spread across now 10 countries. So it's starting. It's really exciting. We need more, and we hope to get folks from every country. So if you're listening to this, Go do it. It's gonna be super fun. You're gonna be part of a massive art project.
theintersun.org.
You're gonna be part of a massive art project, and your handprint will live through a burn and be made into permanent art that will hopefully that will be installed around the world. So it has a life after Burning Man as well.
Yeah, so the hands are made of metal. So the
They
wood
are.
of the structure is going to be burned down, and all the hands
Yep.
are going to last on.
Yeah, that's kind of part of the art, right? It's like I would rather see, and I would rather build a piece where we have 100,000 plus people can like work together to make something, and then all of us get to witness the thing probably most of us are concerned about of our world going away, right? And then we'll have a scar. Your hand will be burned a little, but it'll live on, right? Because I didn't want to leave people with this idea of it's just this terrible dystopia. I believe fully that we can get past this dark time and move on to something that's that we look back and are proud that we've overcome. So
Fascinating. And the real effect of it takes this massive community of people working all over the world.
mm-hmm. Yeah, this is it's a big dream, a big vision, but I think we can do it, and that's why I keep waking up each day and putting everything I have at it. So and it inspires me. So I hope it inspires others around the world too.
What what are the challenges? What are the hurdles between today and Burning Man?
The biggest hurdle is like getting the word out and getting people to come in and participate with us early. I feel good that'll as we learn like what and get the feedback from people that are like, oh, this was hard. I don't know. Like we'll work with it. But it's that and then funding. So, I mean, we're not trying to be super forward about it, but we definitely need some startup capital in order to secure a place to build here in the Bay and start things moving. One of the benefits that we have is the core team of people. Like we built the biggest structures out there. So the execution piece isn't as big of a concern if we can get moving in a relatively short period of time. So that's probably the biggest project risk is that we don't get enough momentum early. So we're just starting out and we've got, we're shooting for Earth Day as kind of our like a milestone, a planted flag, if you will, on April 22nd is like, could we get over 10,000 people and, the initial startup capital to push forward. So we will bring a version of the Inner Sun project out there this year. Whether it be, a 10, 15, 20 foot structure that we know we can build. But it would be, we definitely have the skill sets and the ability to build it the size and scale that we hope to. And so we're going to push as hard as we can to get there.
And what are the costs of a project like this? How much are we talking?
Sure. This is a fun thing because a lot of these costs of projects are a little disguised, specifically some of the larger ones. I've been fortunate. This will be my 5th large build that I've done out there. So I've been around and managed the budgets of all these. The short answer is, without doing the project justice in the sense of like covering some costs that are needed, the project is somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000. The true budget, something that, where we can actually cover people's costs, they come full time on the project and treat people correctly, kind of like which I think a lot of us see in the future of like minimum basic incomes and other things, it starts to get close to $1 million. So we're somewhere in that range. We're all committed to build it. So whatever, funding we can secure. But our target is in that range of $1 million. So.
And is this all private donors?
Yep. We submitted multiple times for support through Burning Man, and we're silly enough. We're going to continue to push forward regardless of their financial support. So, which is kind of a cool story in a lot of ways. Like either the community of people care enough to help us build it and help us contribute, or they don't. And it's like, we're going to try and we'll live with whatever result we have. So I still believe that there are enough people out there that would, at minimum give, 10, 20, 30 bucks. And if we get the numbers of people, then the $1 million in scale becomes really small. And that's kind of by design where we get to spread the risk. So.
And when you said that you're looking to get the word out there and get people to participate, is that limited to writing the message and taking the picture?
Not at all. No, that's like, it's kind of fun talking to another, software designer or product designer, right? And so it's like, what's the first thing that's the smallest ask that gets the biggest payback? And we thought that like the doing that with a hand and having the reward of being like, I get to make art with this awesome group of people. There's way more than that. Like we're going to try to get chapter leads all around the different geographical areas that can go and hopefully speak on behalf of the project. So if we find some people that are really excited that maybe can't make it to the Bay to work, like we're seeking those type of folks. And then also, like if people want to come and build, we'll have big build weekends each weekend as we get going. So if you actually want to come and make the structure, we invite you to do that as well. So basically from as simple as I signed up and I didn't even, I just want to follow along with the project and I'm shy and I don't want to take a picture of my hand. Like that's the minimum, all the way to I want to go and, quit my life and come build this project. Like whatever one fits your life the best, we welcome it. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. So it's a good group of people. And one of the things that's really inspiring is like, it's a diverse group of people. We have people that, are unemployed or retired, all the way to, like some of the crew members are early employees of some of those tech companies you mentioned earlier. So like, yeah. It's a really awesome group of folks that is kind of representative. So.
And changing the subject slightly, you had this idea before when you were in Indiana about the Effigy with the two. I mean, I don't want to steal your thunder, but can you talk about that at all?
Sure. It was at the time, like I see the value in these big art projects just in general. Like some of the communities that are built out of them are amazing. So in Indiana, I was trying to figure out how I could potentially blend that with a campaign a little bit. And ultimately I made the decision that it would have been irresponsible to try to do that, given the resources we had out there. And so that's why we pulled back on that concept. But I would definitely say that this is the better iteration of that where we're heading down. So what you're referring to was, we were making an attempt to get on the ballot, and we were trying to do an Independence Day burn. Still want to do this, by the way. It will happen. But the idea was we were going to celebrate Independence Day by, getting on the ballot and also having a celebration with an effigy that's kind of a little tie back into my past. So.
Wait, you haven't said.
Oh, what's that?
You haven't said what it's an effigy of.
Oh, it was the two parties. We're going to burn down an effigy of the two parties. Yeah, it was a little bit forward. So,
so we're talking about a 50-foot donkey and a 50-foot elephant.
Yeah, that'll happen. So we'll do that.
On fire. Yep. Burn to the ground.
Yep. That's going to happen. This will be step one. Let's do the Inner Sun project. We'll get through that. Then we'll target Independence Day. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So like, I hope that I inspire enough people to like, what we have a big community of people, and we get to use liquid democracy to help guide us on like what things we want to do, what monumental art pieces do we want to build in the world. So that is what I hope my life becomes. So
yeah.
But
I think the numbers are really stark. It's like 80% or 90% of Americans wish there was a competitive third party.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And part of the art of that, it's not meant to be like an attack, right? Like, it's not aggressive in that way. It can be perceived it, but it's in a sense that we know 90, 80%, whatever the stat is, a large percentage of people know that this is a busted system. So we need to get past it and we need to release it. And that's kind of at the heart of some of what creates Burning Man, is like, we build the man to burn it down and to rethink like what we want to do in our lives. And so I felt like there was a nice parallel there with like, the party served us for many years. We need to move on. So.
Well, there's this element of spectacle to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like this once in a lifetime thing. How often are you going to see these gigantic wooden models on fire burned to the ground?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you gotta be there. You gotta go check it out.
And that's what we're doing with the Inner Sun right now. Like it'll be, I think, one of the top 5 or top 10 like ever built of the world, like models wise, what we're doing. And we get to sit there and
In
watch and
history.
broadcast. Yeah. So it's gonna be cool. That's huge. 84 feet is big. So like, so in that vein, like that's step one in this project. And then I cannot wait to see, getting away from burnable art, doing other things. Like it's a really neat thing when you get a group of people that care that, so that's the hope. Hopefully we get to build the big donkey and the big elephant. So
Totally.
come lend a hand and you'll be able to make it happen.
I would love to lend a hand.
Awesome.
Okay, so what should we talk about next?
Oh man, you got me riled up. I love talking about this stuff. So, but how can I be of assistance as far as liquid democracy goes? Like, I'm trying to, everything I do in my, is trying to figure out how to be respectful to the numbers of people that come in and contribute. So to me, liquid democracy is tied in really well to that. So
Totally. Here's a question for you. How do you explain liquid democracy to somebody that's never heard of the term? What did you find connects well with people?
that was it was a challenge, and I know you guys are struggling, or not struggling, but it's a bump.
We've done a lot of different variations.
Yeah. I think the best way that I got to it was putting it in context with what people do each day. And unfortunately, we learned these kind of ways to explain it a little late in the campaign. But it was like, you vote every day. Like, I think that if you can sell the idea that people vote every day, meaning every time you touch your screen, you vote. Every time you like a post or star a post or do anything, it's a vote.
People
and I think that
you're saying.
Yeah, no, it's just saying. Like, I think that people maybe don't consider that task as voting, but anybody that makes the software knows it's a vote, right? You tell information about yourself as you do it. So every time you use an application, or you even as you scroll and how you scroll and where you stop, right? That's all votes.
Yeah.
And so I think that watched people's eyes kind of open up when they thought about it that way. And then I'm like, then you are able to get in a context to shift them into saying, what we're trying to do is allow you to vote on really critical things, or pass off the vote to people that are better suited to do that, because there's too many things to vote on, right? And I think carrying it in a story is really helpful, because you want to kind of ground them a little bit in the sense that, this is an action they do all the time. They're on their phone all the time. And we're trying to enable them to speak their truth. And that was helpful. So I would say that would be the way in which I would pitch liquid democracy, is in kind of a story form, trying to explain to them that, this thing you do, people take advantage of all the time to sell you a handbag. What if we did it in a way that we could actually govern ourselves and be respectful? So that's how I'd pitch it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And does that work for all different audiences? One thing that I found works well is really personalizing the story.
Mm-hmm.
So not so much trying to avoid going on a diatribe, trying to go on lecturing,
Mm-hmm.
but asking people questions like, what is your experience right now? Did you research all your options before you voted for a candidate? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And really trying to start with the firsthand frustrations that people are experiencing.
Yeah.
That usually goes over so well. Like,
Nice.
nearly 100% of the time, people come away with it like, "Oh my God, you're right. We could be doing this so much better." The one downside is it's timely. I mean, it takes a while. This could be like a 30-minute conversation, versus that little 30-second quick elevator pitch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and that's where the use case comes in, right? That's where you're able to get a group of people doing it that you can show. I think will help. And that's the same type of thing with any type of project you build, right? Like, once you get something that is more tangible and real, people then the amount of time you need to pitch it drops. So, and it's good work. It just takes time and effort. So, and your pitch has already gotten better. over the short period we've gotten to know each other, like it's the website's gotten better, the name's gotten better, the
Yeah.
ability for you to talk about it's gotten better. So and that's the overnight successes of a lot of these people. Oh my god, it was an overnight. No, it wasn't. It took a long time. So
10 years of preparation for the
yeah,
overnight success.
exactly. So I applaud
Yeah.
you for doing it.
Well, I think everybody really dedicated to stuff recognizes that it's not going to happen overnight.
Hmm.
But as long as we're moving in the right direction in terms of helping to share the ideas and helping the general public and the audience ask more questions and understand what's possible, and then also ask and answer and create solutions for some of the hard logistical and technical problems. It's just a series of steps and steps and steps and
Yeah.
pushing
A
in the
good
right
way
direction.
I thought about, when I heard, getting in the political arena, there's the common terminology of political science, right? So there's a science to politics. Um, and I kind of I kind of exited that in a sense of like, I think there's an art to it. So that's my take on it. It's political art more than it is political science. So it's that human aspect of it that's really, really critical, and trying to find each unique story to explain to them why it matters in their life. That's how you move large groups of people in their thought. So, and hopefully you can't preach. I think that we in our society today are so used to people trying to preach at us. It's just, you have a wall, and you've got to allow people to, think for themselves, take in a little of the information you told them, and then allow them to explain to them rather, and then allow them to think about it. And hopefully over a course of time that change takes hold. So because they believe in it. So
Yeah. Yeah. There's this element, so the most popular services online are Google, Facebook, Wikipedia, YouTube, Reddit. Let's say
yeah.
these are the top 5. There's some very minor exceptions now with Google and Facebook, but for the most part, all of those services reached a billion people without getting a single paid advertisement.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them improved people's lives and had this remarkability in the literal sense, and that people wanted to remark about them. People told their
Mm-hmm.
friends, hey, you want to know something? Why don't you Google it? Or why aren't you on Facebook? I want to share these updates with you, or just sending videos on YouTube. And so there's an aspect to that I look at in admiration. I mean, the scale we're talking about is just wild. There are
Mm-hmm.
more people that log onto YouTube every single day than every last Christian on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And YouTube didn't exist 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So in my own mind, there's a part of me that's thinking like, we need to be solving real problems for people. We need to be providing a better solution for the things that they already want to do, advocating for policy that they support, or organizing opposition against policies that they think are a bad idea for our communities. Simply. And also helping to identify and elevate the trusted members of our community that we want to be leading us.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that Google is not something, the vast majority of people don't know how it works.
Mm-hmm.
They just
By
know, if
design.
I go to this website, I type in my search, look, there are all my results. And so I think in terms of reaching a real mass audience, a real critical mass, we need to make things that easy,
Mm-hmm.
that simple. Now, on the other hand, here's the major difference. So many differences, but one very major difference is that one of the things that we're offering here are liquid candidates. And so that is already somebody running for office, giving speeches, telling people this is what a better world can look like. This is why I'm running. This is what I'm offering. This is what the future I want to bring us into. And so the nature of political campaigns necessitates talking about these ideas very differently than the nature of watching videos,
Right.
just YouTube. Yeah, the irony is that people will be watching this conversation on YouTube, of
Of
course.
course. Yeah.
But setting that
It's
aside,
good. It does a job well, like it's a
exactly,
pretty neat thing that we can watch other people, anywhere around the world. So,
that's right. So you and I ran for office advocating for this 21st century vision for political representation.
mhm.
And there have been a few other people. There's about a dozen digital democracy candidates at this point. We've been keeping this list at liquidcandidates.com that has everybody's name, where they ran,
Awesome.
how many votes they got. I think we're up to 64,000 votes for office
Sweet.
on official ballots. Yeah. But thinking, 10 years down the road, where we need to go, to me, success looks like 5,000 candidates.
Mm-hmm.
100,000 candidates. That might be a little excessive, but many, many thousands of candidates, not a handful, a huge number. More liquid candidates than all the candidates running attached to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party combined.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's possible, for sure. There have been so many people that have told me, in their own words, I care so much about our politics, our country, our governance, all these things. I'm watching everything that's happening in horror, as it's been seemingly getting worse and worse and worse for a long time. But the idea of running for office is terrifying.
Yeah. And the current way to do it it's a tough, like we know that. So it
Well,
shouldn't
the
be.
pitch
But
in the current system is I'm the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The current system is there are all these problems. Vote David Ernst into power to solve it, or vote
Right.
whatever it is into power to solve it. And so there's this massive level of ego, not to say that in a judgmental way, but just
Mm-hmm.
it's
No,
all
you're
about
right.
this personality.
Yeah, it's the thing that scared me the most, right? Like I'm not somebody that likes to go and like I don't thrive on that. So.
Totally. But what's different about being a liquid candidate is it's not about you at all. It's literally, I want to represent the community. I can be a real representative for the community. And of course, we all have opinions. We're going to weigh in on this decision, that decision, the other decision. But it's so much easier logistically for me because I already know exactly how I ought to be voting if I want to truly represent the liquid majority on every decision. But also, it's less psychologically intimidating because the campaign is not about me. It's really about this idea of less corrupt governance, more inclusive governance, more accessible governance, more real representation.
It lends itself really well to it is in itself another checks and balances in the way I look at it, right? So it needs some guidance, right? This is this interesting thing with leadership. People need somebody or something to get behind, but that leader needs to be held accountable. And I think that's where our current government is at a point where it is so broken. And I think that's one of the resultants of where we're at today, is somebody has been able to take all the tools that we have, both parties, both presidential elections, and manipulate it. Because the system's easy to manipulate when you know what you're doing. And so the goal with liquid democracy for me is like trying to safeguard that some, if not to an extreme of like, hey, we need that direct line of communication in the facts to actually stand true. And we all need to fight for that. That's a thing that makes democracies run. Because when you can abstract away all of the actual data, then you can make the story whatever you want it to be. That's the real beauty and power of liquid democracy, is like you will be held accountable by the people that you are representing. And that also allows the ego to kind of settle, right? You don't need to be this, I can solve all your problems person. And that's not, in my past, like, I don't want that person leading us like that.
Yeah.
That's a sign of a bad leader,
Yeah.
right? Like, you don't have all the answers.
Nobody does. I mean, we're only human.
Yeah. So, the thing with liquid democracy on pushing for that and taking down the barriers of entry for potential candidates that are really good, right? Like, some of the best leaders are the most humble. Some of the best leaders are the ones that aren't outspoken. They're the ones that are able to figure out how to manage, a team of hundreds to go do something. And the good leaders of that typically don't sit there and talk all the time. So I think that's one of the things where your work can help pave that path. Because one of the beautiful things is liquid democracy is really scalable in the sense if you do the underlying push on like explaining what it is clearly, then people can easily gravitate towards it and go run. Right. And I think that's the magic sauce, what I heard you talking about with Google and Wikipedia and YouTube, right? Is like, we have a very unified message, which is awesome. And that unified message doesn't particularly mean that you, down to the individual level, you have to give up your own viewpoints. You can get behind liquid democracy and still hold your own views. And I think that finding that pairing is going to be the thing that scales it. So we can all talk about liquid democracy from the far right and the far left. And they're both true.
Yeah.
So, which is cool. And that's the thing that the parties can't. So.
Yeah. Well, there's this certain other element to it. Imagine the best possible candidate, the ideal representative. The great thing about a liquid candidate is they can say, look, I respect this person as well. They do have a lot of fantastic answers on all these questions. And I hope all the community will proxy to them and elevate them, and they'll always weigh in.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's ever any question, we always have the flexibility to now weigh in ourselves directly, or maybe on some topics. The point is that the liquid offering is inclusive of any single best representative and all the other best representatives.
The elections are just in that sense are just points in time where it is kind of originally designed of like, who has the time and the ability to go lead us for a while, right? I think that's another issue in our current system, is like, you have people that are in there 30, 40 years, right? And like, that's not healthy. It's healthy to come in, and we want more people in our society to go and learn what it's like to lead, because once you've gone through it, then you respect it well more. And so, I think that liquidness of it, in the sense that you might lead for 2 years, and then this other person that's been, actively involved and have like helped you make all the decisions on a certain front, switches for a little while, and then the next person rotates in, right? And that's really
it's liquid.
Good. Yeah, look at that. We named it right. So it's like, it's kind of mind numbing. It's like, guys, this will work. Let's just try it. Like, it's not going to get much worse.
So just to, in case it's not already obvious, to beat the horse in the head, or whatever the saying is, I totally bungled that. But
no horses were harmed in this filming.
But this is our goal for this channel, for this content, for Liquid Future, is to help spread these ideas to reach many more people. The sort of internal tagline we say is empower and encourage people to understand and advocate for liquid democracy itself.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So you and I right now, we're chatting and brainstorming, and hopefully there are a lot of people watching this thinking, now I understand it better. Now I have more perspective better. And ideally they're thinking, maybe I should run. Maybe I should follow Nathan's lead.
Yeah. Follow David's lead. Follow all the others that did it,
it's bring these ideas to more people.
Yep. So it's not only in politics. That's what I'm venturing out, is like, I think that there'll be a net positive in our political system, but we don't have to stay there. Like, it doesn't have to be in that time frame of elections. Like,
completely.
Let's take that group of people, the 64,000 that voted, right? Like, I would love to, that would solve the goal. How do we get to 64,000 that lend a hand? Then we have a unified message to, like, we did a thing. We made a piece of art. So
Here's a question for you. How many people do you think learned or heard the word liquid democracy because of you, because of your candidacy? If you had to put a number on it,
if I had to put a number on it, I would imagine that number of heard the word in the Midwest, probably a couple 100,000.
or
Because there was some good
even the tiniest bit more
tiniest,
familiar with
yeah.
it.
I would say the tiniest would be in that realm, a 250,000 in that sense. But given the coverage we got pretty good coverage for launching, like, and
It's
throwing together a
amazing.
campaign so quickly. Like, it was cool, and people took us seriously. Like, we got reached out by, the then senator that was in the race. His campaign reached out to us, and it's like, working out of your mom's house trying to figure out how to run a campaign. It's like, it's pretty
What
neat.
did what was their perspective? The incumbent,
Um, it was an interesting road. I mean, their campaign took us seriously. Like, it was good, and they should have,
like they were
because,
intimidated, they were scared.
not scared. No, I don't think they were scared, but they were, took it seriously enough to actually engage with us for a minute, and that meant something.
If you look at there's so many quantitative metrics that show that this moment in time, more people want to be involved, more
Mhm.
people are running for unprecedented number of people running for office, unprecedented time, number of people participating in a rally,
Yeah,
showing up in
it,
person.
it's one of these things where I have a newfound respect on what it means to live and be governed by a democracy, right? Or by of the people, by the people, right? And I've been fortunate in my career in life to have traveled to many countries and seen other ways of leadership, and we're all trying to figure out different ways, right? Be it Russia, be it China, be it the United States, be it Brazil. And it takes a lot of work to be civil, and it takes a lot of work to um, agree to be governed by a set of principles and rules. And we should not take that for granted. There's been a lot of art, and there's been a lot of things written in the past that have been warning signs to people that sit in and inhabit this world today. And it's important. Like, we all need to do things, and that's, running for office is a sign of that, and that gives me hope that we can overcome it. Like, forget the signature process and all these things. Like, we might not have a place to live in 50 years, right? Like, it's like stuff like that's possible and real. And I'm not trying to be alarmist, but, like, we need to be able to communicate and use the tools we have that we built, the ability to, like, get on a call, halfway around the world and, like, sort problems out. And that's the stuff we need to get some leaders and, a lot of us, right? Like, all walks of life, to step in and be like, let's respect each other. Let's listen. Let's talk through the problem at hand, and, like, decide, like, move forward in a good way, and then check in and be like, was that a good decision? Did we do the right thing? No, we need to course correct. Like, this is just any type of organization, any type of business that's run well does these things. And we need to get our own house in order, which would be good. And I'm hopeful that we can do it. So, because I
Me
don't want
too.
to live in a world that we can't. So I
Yeah,
choose not to.
yeah. A lot of friends are very very negative about
Mm-hmm.
the state of our politics and our self governance. And they'll always ask me, David, why are you so optimistic? I say, because I'm living in the liquid future.
There you
To me,
go.
it's
Nice. I
already
like that.
real. I mean, we
It's,
still have a lot of work to do, of course, but
yeah. I mean, it's one of these things where, I, in leading a lot of these big groups and organizations and whatnot, of thousands of people in my past, like, the job of that person typically is not to, you have to look at all the nasty stuff, right? You have to, like, look at the problems that could sink the ship, if you will.
definitely.
And that's, like, part of when I meet people and kind of look at whether their leadership skills are, like, do they focus there? Do they not get consumed by that viewpoint? Because then you just get in a negative rabbit hole. But you need to, like, look at it, observe it, understand it, and come back to it time and time again to try to correct it. And so we know there's problems. We know there's issues all around us, but we need to start putting things forward that, like liquid democracy, like the InterSun project, like these other things that are, like, engaging for people to come in and take part, because then we can start to build momentum in a different, more positive way. And that's the way out. So the way forward, the way out, the way to, that we can, be in a more inclusive and in a better world. So it's going to take a lot of different projects and a lot of different people. And I'm just glad to be a part of a crew that's doing that. So it's pretty cool. It's inspiring.
So help me just break down the timeline for you.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the case that you were upset about the state of political affairs and you decide, okay, rather than just being a critic, I'm going to try to put myself forward and do something different? And then you discovered these ideas of liquid democracy and said, this is the future I want to advocate for? Or was it the reverse? Did you first learn about liquid democracy and then say, okay, I'll become a candidate, I'll run?
Sure. Um, it was out. I had been following politics more closely after 2015 and 16, admittedly. It was kind of if I speak candidly, like from my perspective, personal perspective, speaking on my behalf, like politics and things were running well enough to where I could focus elsewhere in life. And then, when I saw that lead up and I was early on being like, I think we have a problem here. I think that there are, again, speaking from my own perspective, but it's like that started to kind of catch my attention more and more. And of course, the elections happen, seeing just the demeanor of which we were talking to each other, plummet. I was like, became an ever growing problem. Going back to the like leadership, look at the worst problems in the room, right? And that became higher and higher and higher up in the ladder, to a point where I realized that I had an opportunity to do something about it, or needed to, was like a calling, if you will, and started thinking about what I could do. I started a nonprofit, help, what was the thing? And I started just researching it like I would do any type of, business I'd create or group I would try to start or project I'd make. And in that process of thinking through it and taking notes and doing research, kind of came up with the idea somewhat independently of liquid democracy. And that's when I found you. And then the thing that the void that I saw was people trying to make it real. And that's when the candidacy thing came in. And I remember one night waking up in a cold sweat being like, oh, right, I'm 30. I can go run for the United States Senate, like, by design. And once that popped into my head and I started putting the pieces together, I was like, well, I kind of got to do that. So that's what I did it. It was no magic sauce. It was just like a constant effort each day trying to think about how to solve the problem. And then once I realized that it was doable, possibly, I couldn't get it out of my head. So I did it. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Similar
because
story
that
for
would have
me.
been cool. Like in that vision of things, right? Like there was a path, be it very small, of where we could have had a sitting United States senator advocating for liquid democracy, right? And that, be it small, was worthy of a pursuit. So, and I hope that somebody hearing this that's in a better position with more resources and calls you and says, I heard the podcast and I'm so and let's go take a house seat, or let's go to, what I mean? Like, let's go do it. And so
Yeah.
let's do it.
Yeah. There are a number of people that have reached out that are gearing up to run for House seats in 2020.
Awesome. That's great. So the more people hear about it, we'll look at the 250,000 of context, it'll be millions. And then next thing you know, we'll have a lot of candidates in. So there won't be candidates anymore. They'll be sitting members of Congress. So
That's right. Yeah. There's this idea in my mind. I pinned this short blog post called Liquid Democracy is Inevitable. I
mm-hmm.
did it like the week after the primary when I just come a little I got a good number of votes, but I needed twice as many
Mm-hmm.
to make it through the primary. And so there was a part of me, and I got into it low expectations, but everyone is like, oh, isn't this such a setback? And so my response to this was this short little post called Liquid Democracy is Inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
And the basic idea is that there's some hypothetical democratic perfect representation. Imagine the most number of people satisfied with across every single issue,
Mhm.
thousands of issues, every single issue you can imagine. We hope that our candidates, our elected representatives right now, embody that ideal. And we put them through this gauntlet trying to understand their background, their inspirations, their whole story to suss out which of our candidates more embodies the political future that we're most excited about. But I believe that a liquid democracy that's being used by 100% of the population would always find that liquid majority, that consensus that the most people are the most excited about. And the only way in which a single candidate could be better than that is if they're already voting on every single votable decision 100% in line with it.
Mhm.
I mean, of course, to be fair, there are other things that elected officials do besides simply voting up or down on legislation. They also advocate.
Yep.
They are leaders in terms of character.
This is kind of the model of the human aspect is important, right? That was a question I got a lot. Well, why don't we just like be ruled by computers? I'm like, that it's in a whole other worm of problems, but like we need to the human element is good, and we need to figure out how to balance that with
Definitely.
systematic tool sets, and that's what I see liquid democracy doing. But uh, the important part is that liquid democracy, by design, at its core, will get if it will always want to improve. It will say, in a year's time, we've learned a different thing that actually improves this process. Let's do that now, right? And I think that that's why it's a conflict. I believe in that statement too, of like it will be the future. It might not look like what it is now. It hopefully looks better, because
Yeah,
we will have
much
figured out
better.
these problems, right? And like it doesn't it takes ego to its probably lowest level. That I think that should be the pursuit. Is how do you take ego in the sense that the self and selfless bits, right? Like how do you manage that? And I think that liquid democracy is that pursuit. So
And as we so that's what it looks like in the hypothetical state in which 100% of the population is on board. Right now, we're certainly not at 100% of the population. Both of us have experienced firsthand the challenge of how many people can we reach? How many people um, can we help to understand these ideas and can be excited about pushing them forward, whether with a signature on a
mhm.
ballot petition or vote for office or whatever it may be. So we're definitely not there yet. But the point is that you could imagine like a usage graph,
Mhm.
like a population graph, and any of these things, it's always exponential growth. If each, you have like your R,
Mhm.
to speak in terms of uh, blank on the term, but it's it's like phi raised to the R power.
Uh-huh.
So if it's like 1.1, that means on average, for every 10 people that come in, one person shares it with another person.
Yep.
And that will give you this exponential growth curve. And so the point is, right now, we're definitely on the early parts of the curve where it
Mhm.
looks relatively flat. You can see it progressing a little bit. But if we just keep pushing in the same direction, there is some future point on the curve where we cross the electability point, where we hit electoral victory. We
Mhm.
hit 50% plus one, however many people participated in the last election. And so you can actually create this graph for every single seat.
Mhm.
Every single elected seat had however many votes last time. And so how many people are we at today? And are we getting closer and closer? You could
This kind of goes back to like people use
predict.
Google but don't understand how Google works. Like this is that exact thing, right? Like this is where, we have the math, and we've created systems that we can utilize to understand, right? So like let's use them in a good way. Let's use
Totally.
them to push this. So
And to be fair, of course, there can be all sorts of setbacks
mm-hmm.
where, uh, let's say there's a technical failure.
Yep.
The internet occasionally goes down itself. All the ISPs go down for 6
Sure.
hours, like 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and events like that will shake people's confidence.
Yep.
Or just the liquid democracy makes a decision that shakes people's confidence. And I'm not trying to suggest in any way that
mm-hmm.
there aren't going to be things that pull people back. But I don't know. I just have thinking in these terms of the future point of electoral victory and where we're at today. And you see this growth as more and more people come in, especially because the nature of liquid democracy is when you have a strong position on something, you have all the incentive in the world to try to reach everybody to get them to back you on that as well. It creates this, for better or worse, built-in viral mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So that story gives me incredible optimism that it's a matter of when, not if.
Yeah.
Assuming we can figure out the technical questions, which I think we're making pretty good progress towards.
Yeah, and it's balancing that with being real about the problems, right, and asking for help. Not trying to sell something that is smoke and mirrors, right? We know there's problems. We know there's going to be outages. We know there's going to be hacking attempts when it gets to scale, right? These are all part of insert hacking in computers to like espionage. Like these are not new problems.
Totally.
And part of the really challenging things of managing and protecting a democracy. So, what we're doing is creating a new version of that. And so it's going to have all those same problems. And it takes the people that are within it to care enough to protect themselves. And so, that's part of it. And, hopefully we can get ahead of it. That's the thing. I always look at that curve, right?
Absolutely.
Of like, can we do this without the bloodshed? Right? Like if we will, like as humanity, we've gone through this cycle many times. Like this is not a new cycle we're in right now. We can point back to many times in past, and history has taught us. So the win will be whether we can communicate fast enough and present the ideas well enough to circumvent the really nasty part of the cycle. So
definitely. And to bring a parallel to the financial world, any trader is always thinking, how can I minimize my drawdowns?
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you just keep earning even slow and steady rate, compounding interest over a long period of time.
Yep.
What's the Einstein quote? Compounding interest is the most powerful force in the universe.
Yep. No, he's a smart man. He lived years ago. And there's a lot of things that another one that's great is art is one hand reaching into the heavens and another into the earth, and the energy that flows between you. That comes from a scientist, right? I love it.
That's Einstein?
Like, yeah.
Wow, I've never
it's great.
Heard that.
Yeah, it's perfect. So he's a smart man and understood it. So.
But to your point, the key is to avoid the compound downs.
Yeah.
We definitely want to get ahead and be preventative and be almost paranoid about making sure, covering our bases to make sure that all the worst case scenarios that could really derail this stuff doesn't come up.
And I'll make this little thing pitch here that I think is really interesting is like, it is that balancing point that's important. And this is why it drives me crazy to see a conservative mindset and a progressive or liberal mindset. Like it's such odds. It's like some of the best things you can have in a team, a small team, is you can have somebody that's extremely progressive and loves to try new ideas, right? And you need an equal balance on that somebody's conservative, and they need to respect one another, because it's like that conservative is going to be the one that keeps you from jumping off a cliff that you go way down, right? Like that
Absolutely.
person is going to at least make you think. And like we need that. We need those people of both scenarios to like one respect one another, and that's where we get in a more healthy balance there. It's not saying we all need to be the same. It's saying that we all need to respect each other's skills. And I want the worrywart of a person to be like, hey, have you thought of this? Hey, have you thought of this? And that person should want the I'm just going to do it person, right? And so I'm hopeful that that's going to look more like that in the future than less. So,
Absolutely. And I think some of us can adopt different mindsets in different situations.
yeah, and that's a skill set, right? But it's not the norm. So, and you can't let
Well,
that
I
get
just
to your head
hope.
to think that you know everything. That's the other problem that I see. It's like, oh, I can do it all. I know everything. I know have all the answers. It's like, no, you don't. So,
Definitely. I think one thing that's holding us back on a national level from communicating gracefully with each other is that so much of modern day political conversation is so deeply wound up with our identities.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
You think
and I
of
think
I'm a progressive or I'm a conservative or I'm a this or
mm-hmm.
that. And so anyone questioning these ideas becomes an attack on our being.
Yeah,
And that
and
seems like a recipe for unproductive conversations.
it is. And the other thing too is being able to make comments so broadly and not own the results. So I think that's a big difference between being online and I mean connected via I could shut the laptop, right? I could go away, or I could present myself as somebody different, or present myself 100 different ways. And that's not something that's not really being human. And I think that humanity and coming across the internet is going to be a real big challenge, and we're going to have to figure out how to do that work. Um, so I'm excited by those challenges because we shouldn't give up the ability to communicate like this, but we need to find a way in which when you communicate, you think about people will watch this and they like you would in a town hall, or you would on the street of a corner of a street, excuse me. So like that's where we need to get to a little more. And I think when we get there, then the speed at which we communicate will help grow that idea to where it can solve itself. So,
Yeah,
but to your point, like it definitely attacks on the person. Um, it drove me nuts when people identified with it. It's like you might be conservative in this area and liberal in that, right? Stop pinning yourself into one idea across all. That's not healthy. So
totally.
we'll get there. It's good. We good.
Yeah, totally. I'll share a little idea.
Yeah, yeah.
As the like virtual reality technology comes along and
Mm-hmm.
becomes actually useful, someone gave me this pitch a year or two ago to recreate the scene from Star Wars with the Galactic Senate.
There you go.
All the different representatives in this downward cone being
Sweet.
able to advocate their position and to create an interface for a liquid democracy that you can actually step into, see full three-dimensional people,
I dig it.
and advocate. This is what we need to do, or this is what we need to do.
So
I don't know. It's a
here's my
neat idea.
proposition. So it's recorded in all of time for fun.
Yeah,
If the audience and people will play along and build art with me, sometime in our lifetime, we will be able to actually make that real, and we'll make the galactic liquid democracy core that we'll build somewhere in the world, and we'll have people be able to not only use it to go and make decisions, but people could join it virtually anywhere around the world. I'm down to build it. I think it'd be fun.
I mean, I hope it would be less than 5 years from now. You're
Yeah,
saying lifetime, but
let's do it.
I think we're
Yeah, I
closer
mean,
than.
the team we have right now could totally build that. It'd be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the question is like, is that the highest priority? Are we going to stop working on
No, you won't.
making things accessible and secure
Mhm.
and doing that for this fun other piece? I mean, of
I
course, we
think
want the
it's
liquid
not a zero
platform
sum
to
game, right?
be exactly. We want the platform to be accessible from a digital point of view. Have open APIs so that
Mm-hmm.
other people can work on neat ideas like this.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the pairing right now. You're talking to your crazy art friend,
Exactly.
So, let's do that and inspire some people, and then they'll use their skills to actually make the product too. That's kind of the fun little balancing act. So, yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever tried that? Like hanging out with people in VR?
I have done a little, but not. I'm curious. I think it'll be fun. So, I mean, I really
Yeah.
enjoy some of the the books like Ready Player One and whatnot, where they
Totally.
talk, and put you in that mindset. Which, this is kind of it. It's just unfortunately, you're still on a 2-dimensional screen, but we are just hanging out. So
Yeah.
somebody
And
that
this is a
doesn't know
long way.
this,
I
like it's just me
remember,
talking out of a box. If you
yeah, I
didn't know like what it
remember
was doing.
maybe it was 15 years ago or something,
Mhm.
thinking, oh, it's going to be such a game changer when we can have live video chats
Yeah.
in our pockets. And this was before smartphones, but I remember being so excited. I was pretty young at the time, but thinking, oh my gosh, it's gonna be such a game changer. I'm gonna be able to talk to all my friends and my family and see them right there. And now we take it
Yeah.
almost for granted.
Yep. The pace at which we've been able to make things because it compounds, right? Like now we
Exactly.
can use this to do something else. So like
Exactly.
it's
And makes us better at collaborating in all these other ways, as you're pointing out.
yeah. And then you start to realize what you have a limited amount of time and what you put it towards and what's your personal best and highest and best use. Um, and then you just
Exactly.
ask for a little forgiveness and try. So,
Exactly.
always try to have a good grounding. So,
Exactly. 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 Yeah, I mean, I personally want to live in such a way that just getting things out there, giving people something to engage with. A lot of it's going to be less than perfect forever, but especially the first attempt.
nice. Well,
But it's better to push ideas forward, even if it doesn't work out, than to always be paralyzed by
yeah.
it's not
I
perfect
can't I
yet. I
can't
don't
wait
know.
to I can't wait to hear your answer to what keeps you alive. So,
What keeps me alive? Oh,
yeah,
now
that's the
this is gonna be
project
a good one.
question. I know. Write it on your hand. Take a selfie with it.
Okay.
Good.
I'm
So,
down. I'm excited. One more time.
yeah,
The inner sun.org.
theinnersun.org. Yep.
You know why I said Black Sun, right?
No, it's that.
It's
I
from
probably should
another
know.
VR book.
Oh, cool.
It's
Sweet.
from it's a Neil Stevenson novel.
Hmm.
Um it's called like Snow Crash. So
Oh,
it's
yeah,
Snow
yeah.
Crash.
Nice.
It's
I,
the parallel to the Oasis from Ready Player One is this
mhm.
bar that all the characters hang out with in virtual reality called the Black Sun.
Cool. Oh, I remember that.
And
I've started that book. I haven't finished it though. So
yeah, I
cool.
did the same thing. I picked it up and I set it back down. Um, okay, so I wanted to ask you. You were saying earlier about some past experience with podcasting.
Yeah. Mhm.
What are your thoughts on the medium?
I think it's personally, I love it. I like most things in life. There's too much content,
It's
so
hard.
I always feel like what I give my attention to when I consume the podcast. But what I love about podcasts is that I can multitask, meaning even if it's as simple as taking a walk or doing some mindless work or exercising, like, and it's a good way to, as opposed to a video in my face, digest good information, and I can also play back speed faster, which I do. So like I like that medium quite a lot on the spoken word, and it allows my mind to kind of paint the picture, which I think is a good creative and healthy process versus watching somebody else's vision so clearly defined in film. So I'm a big fan, and uh, I also think it's really fun for growing a movement to where you get to have an authority in some ways and like invite people to come and talk with you and learn from them, not only yourself, but push that into the world. So, yeah, like I think they're really neat.
100%.
And, I'm excited to see what the next version will be down the road too.
Totally. Yeah, I mean we're just getting started. It's been less than a month since we started working on Liquid Future,
Sweet.
and
I love the
we're
name,
pretty
by the
happy.
way. So
Yeah,
it's important.
totally.
Do
Yeah,
you have, do you have liquidfuture.com? Did you get the coverage and all that?
liquidfuture.org.
Okay, great.
I can't
Did you
remember
get the
what's the
.com?
.com. I can't
Okay,
remember. I don't think so.
nice. all those domains I bought, by the way, I think are expiring / have expired. So if you want any of them, I
Oh,
could, yeah. So
yeah.
you can
I need
pick
to
them
look
up
over that
after
list
I
again.
can drop them.
Totally.
So, but,
Um, yeah, yeah, domains. Oh my God. I have future.vote. Future.vote expires in 2 days.
there you go. And you always got to decide, like, is it worth the money now? I
It's only like $5 or something,
know they
or
always
maybe
get you
it's
at the $5.
$50 for that one.
Yeah, nice.
I can't
Hmm.
remember. Um, the
So
problem
funny.
is that you just keep adding more to your card, and then it's like, why do I have all these things that I'm not using?
I know. The so here's a funny domain story with the Inner Sun project. So we were trying to do what are we going to name the piece? The Inner Sun was kind of thing that really resonated with us as and so we were trying to say, is it the Inner Sun, like, innersun.com, net and org, like hopefully somebody out there that there's a group that owns those would love to talk with you. That'd be nice to have them since you're not using them. But there was theinnersun.com was owned. And so I did a little who us look up as I do, and found this gentleman named Rudy. He's in Canada. And I was like, I'll shoot him an email. Let me just start a conversation with him. And he emails me nearly right back, and we jump on a call. And it turns out that he has been writing a book called The Inner Sun for 10 years. And that was what his domain that he was going to publish the book under. So he had this really personal connection to it. And we were talking about what we were trying to do with the project. And
It's beautiful.
um, yeah, and so he also said, happened to be one of the biggest hot sauce producers in Canada, which was fun. So,
Hot sauce.
and hot sauce, yeah, he actually sent us a bunch of hot sauce for the project, which is great. um, and he's like, let me have a think about it. And he was nice enough. He gave me a call a couple days later and says, you guys can have the domain. So he just gave us the domain. Yeah, so it was
That
pretty
was
awesome.
.com.
.com, yeah. So we have the .com, but we're pointing it to the org.
I see.
So yeah, it was just kind of like a really heartwarming, like, oh, that was cool. So he just transferred the domain over and was like,
And you got to get
yeah.
his hand as well.
Oh yeah, totally. He's involved. He's part of the project, so he's one of our Canada members. So it
That's
was
awesome.
great. Yeah. Anyways, so sometimes there's good people out there, which is nice. So
Oh, I think the vast majority of the time, there are good people out there.
yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah. I think we're at a pretty good place. We've gotten a lot of great conversations, and I think the general attitude is hopefully we'll just be able to do it again more in the future.
yeah, totally. And maybe you'll come on to the podcast we start here. So
Definitely.
which would be awesome. And think I'd love to get you involved as much as you guys are, think it worthy on the project. So, I see a path to where we can experiment with liquid democracy as it grows. So, and let's go make big art. So,
I love it. Well, thank you again for taking the time to do this.
awesome. You too.